Hi guys, and welcome to Friday at 2 o'clock, and that must mean that it's Smart School Council's members meetup time, and I am Sam. In this video, we're going to do three things. We're going to talk to you about what's going on with Smart School Councils, talk to you about what's going on with Home Debate Club, and the major thing is that we're going to have another Q&A following a really successful one last week. If you don't know me yet, I'm Sam. I am the head of programs at Smart School Councils, and I'm here with Greg. Who are you, Greg?
Hi everyone. One of the founders at Smart School Councils. Good to see you. I am. That's who I am. Do you want any more information from me, Sam?
No, tell us how you're doing, Greg. What's going on in Gregland?
So I've just had a really long week of doing Smart School Council stuff, Home Debate Club stuff. It feels like a very long week this week, but it's been a good one nonetheless.
Nice. Well,
I like your t-shirt, Sam, as well. Is that a rugby t-shirt?
Yeah, it is actually. Not in my most smart office attire today, because I'm in the process of moving home, so I'm getting all my things packed away. So yeah, I come laden with World Cup rugby t-shirt today. Cool. So just want to see who's out there, guys. So as we normally do, we're just going to make sure we're set up correctly. So send us a hi and tell us how your week's been. Actually, I was talking to a teacher the other day, and she said to me something that resonated with me. She said, I didn't get into the teaching game to sit in front of a computer all day. And that made me laugh, that comment, Greg, quite a lot. And I wondered how many of our teachers felt the same. So when you're saying hi to us, like Sarah has already. Hi, Sarah, how are you doing? On a scale of 1 to 5, with 5 being the highest level of agreement, how much do you agree with that statement? I didn't get into the teaching game to sit in front of a computer all day. Greg, I think you're watching out for the comments, aren't you?
Yeah, will do. Can I give you my answer as well? I'm not in the teaching game, but I really miss not seeing any young people. I think we're doing something important for young people, but it's hard not seeing what that looks like. So I would maybe give myself a 2.
2. Yeah. Okay. I mean, if you're giving yourself a 2, Greg, I think you're doing well on that question, because I think this teacher I was speaking to the other day was incontrovertibly a 5, way up on that scale. So Sarah, we've seen that you've sent this comment about Home Debate Club. Thank you for it. We will park it, if that's all right, and we'll come on to it when we start to chat about Home Debate Club in not too long at all. But everybody else, keep your comments coming in and we will address them as we go. So first things first, what's going on with Smart School Councils? I think we've got 1 or 2 things to catch up with, Greg, and then we'll go into our Q&A. What's happening this week? So one of the major things in the news that's happened this week is that the government have kind of rolled back a little bit on their promise to get all primary school pupils back before the end of the academic year, and that might have changed, I think, the way in which lots of schools are planning. So that was a big piece of news this week. What's Smart School Council's news, Greg?
Let me tell you that in a second, but let's let you know that Sarah is a 5, just like I'm sure many people. She's back next week with the key worker children. So wishing you well for next week. I wonder if that 5 will hopefully go down to a better number. So wishing you well with that, Sarah. I guess with Smart School Councils this week, it's been an interesting one. It's, we're seeing very much feels a little bit like we've got 2 jobs at the moment. I don't want to kind of tell everyone too much about that, but like when the pandemic hit, we started with Home Debate Club. That was great. And now, our normal work in schools is starting again. And it feels like we've got a lot on with those 2 different things. But basically, we've been thinking. We delivered our first CPD session. Was that this week or last week? I can't remember.
That was actually last week. We have done another one. We have done another one this week. Though we did one yesterday for a specific group of schools working in Oldham, isn't it?
That's right. Yeah. So we did. We didn't. It was almost like an all-staff briefing rather than just talking to the lead teacher. So that was really good, really positive. And we thought about how we can do more of that in terms of like extending our CPD offer over the course of the summer term. So if and we do have CPD sessions booked every other week. Maybe I'll post a link to those if you'd like to join in on any of those. That would be great. And what have we got for next Thursday, Sam? What's the next one?
So one of the things we wanted to talk about was the fact that our summer CPD for next week was one that we build to be about understanding our tech and getting up and running with the class meeting tool. Now, it would appear that that's not hugely popular. And I'm going to take that as being a very positive thing, because that means, Greg, the tool is good and people are happy with it. So we've kind of got a bit of a free slot, haven't we?
Okay. When you say it's not hugely popular, does that mean we've got no bookings, Sam?
That is exactly what that means.
Okay.
I'm just putting some public spin on it, all right? Just don't call me out.
Okay.
Yeah, so we've got no bookings on it for next week, which means we've got an opportunity to look back and say, okay, well, what would be more useful for our members to try and get together a different CPD for next week? So we've got some suggested titles that have been suggested by teachers in the booking form. And I guess we wanted to run them by you and get a sense of if there's anything you were particularly looking for help with. So let me run by the titles that some of the teachers have suggested, Greg, and then maybe we'll take it from there. So we've got, this is kind of my phraseology, but somebody was asking for like a big picture of why a school council matters at all in whatever form. So I've called that a title of what's the point of a school council? Second one we've got, which is like what's the best way of transitioning between two different academic years, and how can you help your comms team to prepare from one year to the next? Good title. I think that one a good subject.
Yeah.
Second one is strategies for launching action teams. Another one I think that there's a lot of potential in. And I guess that's a lot to do with how we launch action teams later in the year and what approaches people have taken to do that. And then the last one we had that was a suggestion was a bit of a case study CPD, I guess, on what Smart School Councils looks like in PRU or SEN or like alternative settings. So those were our suggestions, and I think they're all really interesting. I think we would try, I think, wouldn't we, Greg, to incorporate them all in the future. But yeah, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I really like those suggestions. I really like the big grand question. What's the point? Why are we doing this? Because I think that's something we've got a lot to say about. Because I think way too many schools have a school council because other schools have school councils, and I don't think that's the best reason to have one. I don't think it's a good reason to have one. So I'd be interested to talk about that. But is that the sort of most practical one for people to discuss? Not sure. Transitioning between 2 years seems like a really important one for members who have been established. And action teams, I know that one's been quite popular in terms of an idea that we haven't got. So maybe we should include that. But I think the winning option for me is the fourth one. I know this will only attract schools who are PRUs or in SEN settings or APs, but I think that's something where we haven't given enough attention in the past. So I would be very interested to maybe not do that for next week, but definitely do that before the term is out, because I think I'd love to do more for young people and teachers in those settings. I don't know. What do you think, Sam? Or what does anyone else think? What would you find most useful?
Yeah, that's the question, I think, for our audience and to our members out there is, like, of these options, which do you think would be the most useful? Have you got any other ideas for CPD? I know we've asked you this question before, that you'd like to see us put on. But yeah, I agree totally with your point about sort of alternative provision and how we better explain what a Smart School Councils looks like, or explore what that looks like in alternative provision. I think that might take a little bit of work to get the right expertise from our member schools. And then for next week, I think that I like the idea of doing a big picture one too, you know, having a big sort of near to the end of year, what's the point in pupil voice kind of discussion. I think that'll be fun too. But as Sarah points out, because our teachers maybe don't like political theory as much as we do all the time, Greg, is I want to know what to do with my action teams, and that's the most relevant one to me, which I think is good that you're here reminding us of that, Sarah, because otherwise Greg and I will spend the next 30 minutes talking about political theory and you'll all fall asleep. Even our ardent viewers like Linus will fall asleep. So yeah, I think that makes absolute sense. So maybe we'll look at doing something on action teams for next week, Greg.
Yeah, thanks, Sarah. I think that's a good suggestion, and I think it was one that a few people mentioned that was missing from the ones that we put together. So, okay, so is our actions? Let's do an action team one next week. I can picture the schools already that we would ask to input into that, and then we should also look at a SEN or PRU specific case study. And I think we need to be careful. We're not trying to lump those different settings into one, because obviously they're very different. But maybe a selection of case studies which was about non-mainstream schools, and what techniques we can use to adopt or set up smart school councils in them. Yeah, and I can think of schools already, some of our members who would be interested in that. So that makes sense to me, Sam. Yeah, that's useful.
Yeah, no, agreed. Thanks very much, Sarah. That was really helpful comment. So that's where we are with our CPD and what's coming up for teachers soon. And then I guess the other thing for us just to mention very quickly, wasn't it, Greg, was that our sort of suggested, our weekly suggestions, our symphony questions have started coming out again for those who are doing a bit more teaching with key workers or with pods or bubbles or have you heard any other terms for them so far? Pod is my favorite.
Yeah, I like pod. Those are the other ones I've heard.
Yeah, so for those working with you know, up to, just in some cases I think it's a third of the school population. Yeah, we've got our questions coming out. Anything to add on that, Greg?
Just that we're resuming those as questions like we used to do. We send them every Friday and say, if you want to set up a class meeting, here's a question that you can use. You don't have to use it, but it's there if you want it. And with Home Debate Club, we're using the same question. So for next week, we are asking young people, sorry, I know that I might be jumping ahead slightly, but we're asking, so the questions are, is Boris Johnson doing a good job at leading our country? That's a secondary question. And the primary question is, what one word would you pick to describe 2020 and why? So that's a little bit harder if you're setting that up as a symphony question, but it's very good if you're doing Home Debate Club. So yeah, so check your emails. If you've not got those, then they should be in your inbox if you're a member.
Yeah, very much so. Thanks, Greg. And yeah, a bit of an insight there also as to what we're talking about in Home Debate Club next week, and we will come on to that in a little while. Before we do, though, we just wanted to make sure we had an opportunity for some questions. If you've got any questions for us, and I guess I thought it would be useful to try and frame our questions a little bit now that the decision's been made, not to ask schools in England to return before the summer holidays in a sort of more extensive way, to ask you the question of like, what's your plan for September then? Looking forward to September with pupil voice and with smart school councils, what is it that you want to try and focus on next year? And I guess how can we support you to do that? That's kind of the frame I thought would be useful for our questions this afternoon. And we've got some sort of ideas of how we might talk about it as well, haven't we, Greg, with some suggested questions of our own? Yeah,
exactly. And I guess it's like, for people who are watching, like, what's the one thing that we could do for you or that you would like to focus on that we can support with over this term, over what's remaining of this term, to help you step up your Smart School Council next year? And whether that's a resource we could create or something that you really want to focus on that we could bounce ideas off. Like, obviously September is a different type of September, isn't it? It's not your regular, like your regular September is stressful and busy and hectic, and this is a special, even more kind of it will be even more trying and difficult. So yeah, I think that's worth thinking about. So yeah, what's an example of what we could what we might be able to help with, or a question that people might be thinking, Sam?
So I think one of the major questions I think lots of us are considering in school, working with schools, whatever, is what's pupil voice or sort of participation going to look like in schools if only some students are available at certain points of the day? That's a huge question, isn't it? That I think it's very hard to answer in a comprehensive way, but one that I think it's fair to say that we're very keen as a charity to explore and see where we fit in. Wouldn't you say?
Yeah, it's so difficult to know, isn't it? And I think our approach at the moment is, well, here's a bunch of stuff, and like, please just kind of use it in the way that would be useful to you. But that feels a little bit, and that feels useful at the moment, but it feels a little bit like a cop-out, doesn't it? It feels a bit like we should be maybe more supportive in how we can support more clearer, I guess, in kind of how we say, well, you can use class meetings sometimes, or you can use home debate club. And yeah, I think having a bit of a path to suggest to schools would be better for us, but it's difficult to know at the moment.
Yeah, it is difficult. And the way I know these are just tentative thoughts, but the way I think about it at the moment is, how can you try and get a blanket provision across to students who are either in different settings or in social bubbles, but like Sarah is talking about, and Sarah, thank you for coming. We'll talk to you in a second about it. How do we give them the same provision that we have maybe with schools who are in school or whatever it might be? And I think one of the answers to that is by, as we're trying to suggest at the moment, at least giving consistent approach in pupil voice by either asking in school through class meetings a question that is the same question you then ask on home debate club if that's becoming your home provision. Does that make sense? So you're discussing the same subject in slightly different ways. That allows the whole school community to be considering something collectively, even though they're apart. Early days for thoughts like those, Greg, but yeah, that's what I'm thinking.
Yeah, I think it's all about us sticking to our mission as a charity, which is to involve everybody's voice, and to just think about how we can do that in the most supportive and practical way for our schools. So yeah, I guess we'll keep track on that and keep thinking about how the best way to do it. Should we move on to Sarah's question here? It's a really good one.
Yes, please. So Sarah says, at our school, we're very concerned with children's mental health. Children also not allowed to cross into other bubbles, and it will be difficult to meet with children not in their bubbles. Yeah, that's a massive question, isn't it? And I'm not sure where we would start, but I think that you're right to have that concern, I think, for sure, because it is such a huge strain on people's mental well-being. Any thoughts, Greg?
Yeah, so I guess I've got two thoughts. The first one is what this kind of provision, it shows quite clearly, I think, to me, the things that we can't do. So encouraging loads of pupils to do action teams where they're mixing and meeting lots of pupils from different classes or year groups just isn't possible really with this. So I think we need to be we almost need to look through what we suggest to schools and create a version of it which is pandemic proof, I guess, is maybe not proof, but is our kind of suggested way of working. So I think that's one thing. And then in terms of mental health, I think that's the biggest thing, isn't it? I think and the most important, like if children can come back to school and they are well and healthy, then hopefully we can do work to support the learning that they've missed in various different ways. But that's such an important factor, I think, in what's going on at the moment. So I think what our approach with this is I've read some really interesting research this week about how young people cope with disasters or really kind of, big difficult events. So there was some research based on Hurricane Katrina and the bushfires in Australia, and how one of the best ways for young people to feel and feel positive about what's happening is to be given a role and a voice within the kind of the disaster. So rather than saying, well, actually, this isn't for you, it's too scary, you shouldn't be engaging with that. The research said that if you empower young people to safely connect with what's going on and have a voice and have a say on how to kind of rebuild or to at least give their ideas or reflections on what's happening, then that's what will support effective mental health. So I think that's a really important thing to remember in terms of like a research-based and safe, connected, supported, structured way for young people to have a say and to connect with what's going on, rather than saying, this isn't for you, you're too young, you're too small, and assuming that they won't be affected by it, because I think they will. So I guess our contribution to this is to try and provide that safe, connected, structured way for young people to discuss things at home. So that's what I would say. And if anyone's interested in that research, I found it really fascinating. I'd be very happy to kind of share that. If anyone wants to drop me an email, I would happy to discuss or share that.
Yeah, thanks, Ray. It's really interesting, I think, isn't it? It can sound like a bit of a platitude, but it really isn't when we say, pupil voice is more important now than ever. And it is, because it's not a nice to have when things are going really well. It's a tool for allowing young people to contextualize what's happening around them in the moments of real strain and real difficulty, isn't it? And that's what we're trying to help you as teachers to continue with, by adapting, like Sarah says, trying to be aware of how and what angles to take when we're trying to suggest questions and things like that. So yeah, we'll very much keep this in mind moving forward, won't we?
Yeah, definitely. Cool. Should we move on then, Sam?
Yes, let's. Home Debate Club. So we've got 8 minutes, and we're very sticking to our time very rigidly because we want to take up too much of yours. So what happened in Home Debate Club this week? Well, I'm Greg, I'm going to give a bit of a run through about the things we've done this week. And then maybe we'll sort of open up to some comments and see what people had to say if they got involved. If you're watching and you don't know what Home Debate Club is, we've referenced it a few times. It is an opportunity, a platform, I guess, for both primary and secondary school students to get involved in discussing a coronavirus-inspired question at home, either with their families or with other young people through the platform. And it gives them an opportunity to have their say on the period that we're going through, and hopefully help to sort of make them feel a bit more a part of what's happening. If you don't know what it is and you missed this week's debate, there's a link that we'll put in the comment box for you now as well, where you can go and have a look at the past sessions. So what did we adapt about the program this week? Well, for primaries, we have moved a little bit away from Greg and I's team rivalry, which personally I'm missing in my life. Because I like competition. I think I do well in competition. But what we're doing instead, which is better, is getting young people to contribute themselves to the debate by submitting a video or an essay or even just a couple of lines of their opinion on the week's questions. We publish it in advance of the week. So we've published next week's question already. And what we'll be doing between now and sort of end of day on Tuesday is trying to get as many submissions from young people to be included in the debate. So Valence Primary stepped up really well last week, didn't they, Greg? With Aidan, who gave in a video suggestion of Lord Voldemort for the character that's most like coronavirus, and he won. Absolutely smashed the debate with a huge and comprehensive victory. So I think it added something to the debate. Wouldn't you say that, Greg?
Yeah, absolutely. I think this helping young people to frame our discussion. I mean, I enjoyed going head to head with you, Sam. That was fun. But I think helping and showcasing young people to showcase the discussion is more effective and engaging for other young people. So yeah, it was amazing to have so many young people's voices on it, and I think that's the key thing that anybody watching would be great to kind of support to get more people involved next week.
Yeah, very much so. So if you can do us a favor by trying to encourage as many young people as possible to send in submissions. We're really keen to do that. It doesn't have to be on social media exclusively, because we know some parents have got concerns about that, very rightly. It can be written, it can be emailed in to us. There's a plethora of ways of doing it. So linked to this then, as we mentioned, we're publishing our questions on social media on Friday mornings, along with what we've now called a warm-up task. So, we do our missions and they help to support the learning after the debate. Well, we thought we'd continue to add into our offer by getting young people in primary schools particularly to prepare for the debate in advance by doing a fun and quick warm-up activity. So for example, this week we're discussing, as Greg earlier said, I forget the exact phrase, but it's what one word best describes 2020 and why. So the warm-up activity is to learn 7 or 8 new adjectives and match them to their description as a way of thinking about and planning what sort of words young people would use to describe their year. So I think we've put a comment in, we've put a link in the comment box so you can find the warm-up activities. Feel free to circulate those in your school communities and share them as widely as you like. And then if anybody is from our secondary school audience, our secondary question next week, as Greg said, is... Sorry?
Big question, Sam.
It's a big question. When I mentioned this to a teacher the day, they laughed about 3 minutes straight. It was, is Boris Johnson leading the country well, or thereabouts? And what we'd like to do for secondaries is have a bit of a politics and citizenship focus for the students or the subjects we'd like the link shared with. So if you are one of those teachers, or teachers who teach those subjects for GCSE or A-level, that's the group that we're trying to focus on this week. There's some pre-reading to do, although that sounds really formal. I guess it's just another document, a bit like the primary, to help young people access this debate with a range of opinion on Boris Johnson's leadership abilities, with some news articles to read supporting each one. So we're trying to share that as well across our platforms and get young people excited to get involved in that, what's going to be hotly contested political debate on Wednesday at 12:30.
Yeah, options for whether Boris Johnson's leading our country well are: option 1, he's doing an amazing job. Option 2, it's tough right now, but he's doing well. Option 3, he's underperforming. Option 4, terrible, we need a new leader. We're sort of framing that debate, and be very interested to get people, secondary age pupils involved.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's what we're looking at there as well. Home Debate Club. Any thoughts on that, Greg, before we finish? We've got about a minute and a half. Yeah,
so what I'm really interested in is what schools need to support more parents and families and young people to get involved. So we had a comment earlier, like, what can we do to make it easy for you to get families to see this and understand it? Because I think we've got it's a good project, and we need to support more people to take part. So Sarah's got a comment here, which was like the little video with this week's question on, can we have links for this for our school websites? The answer is yes. So we can create, we can even create maybe one with your school logo on next week, maybe. But initially, yeah, we can share a Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, maybe even a YouTube video with just how and then you can share this on your school profile, if that would be useful. So that's one thing we can do. If anyone else has got any ideas on how best to support that, we'd love to hear them. And meanwhile, if you're sort of thinking of any, one thing that we've been thinking about with one of our amazing teachers, Laurie at Richard Alabon, is Sam or I plus Laurie, the teacher from the school, doing a kind of 1-minute video saying, we can't wait for you, your pupils, directed at pupils and families from that school, saying, we can't wait for you to take part in next week's Home Debate Club. Really want to get the pupils from Richard Allebon involved, and maybe just like a quick logo or something. Would that be useful for any other schools? Would you like that? Just to kind of, because obviously, like, not many people know who Sam or I are. So if there's a teacher from that school or from your school, just to kind of make that bridge a bit easier, then we'd be very happy to do that. So yeah, if that's of interest, let us know in the comments, or if not, you can drop us an email.
I can't believe you don't think that there that many people don't know who I am, Greg. Okay, cool. Thanks, guys. Right, so that leads us to 2:30, and we're going to be pretty prompt with our timings, aren't we, Greg? So is that everything from us this week? I think it is.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, it's great to catch up. And yeah, we'd love to hear from you if you have something to say about this next week's questions.
Yeah.
Or if you're a young person who wants to contribute something, or if you're a teacher who wants some resources or videos or anything to support more young people to get involved and know how to access it. So yeah, I think that's everything I wanted to say.
Yeah, absolutely. So thanks very much, guys, for joining our little sort of conversations on a Friday afternoon with coffee, at least for Greg. I don't drink either tea or coffee, but that's right now. And we'll see you again soon. And yeah, have a wonderful weekend and a nice break. And we'll see you and chat to you in the next week. Thanks,
Bye,
guys.
everyone. See you.
Cheers. Bye.